The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Package Tourist, hosted by yours truly, The Package Tourist, and the magical mystery tour called Life, Matthew DiBiase, and tonight we are broadcasting on the Comfortably Zoned Network. Tonight we are celebrating the life and baseball career of the late Gil Hodges. On this day, 50 years ago, the baseball world lost Gil Hodges, who died of a massive heart attack in 1972. He was only 47 years old. Not only was Gil Hodges a legendary baseball player for the Brooklyn Dodgers, he was also a great baseball manager, leading the 1969 New York Mets to their first World Series title in miraculous fashion. Last January, baseball fans got the thrilling news that Gil Hodges had finally earned induction into the Baseball Hall of Fame, an honor which was long overdue. Tonight we have a feast of friends to honor Gil Hodges' memory. I want to introduce my brothers in the Comfortably Zoned Network family. Rlph Tyko, my guru, Marty Rose, Wallin. Gentlemen, all of us share these common qualities. We love baseball, we love the Brooklyn Dodgers, and we love Gil Hodges. What I like to start off with is when we all finally got the news that Gil earned induction in the Baseball Hall of Fame, is it accurate to say that all of us in our collective souls finally felt that our souls are rested because now he finally got his just due, and when he got inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame? Is it accurate to say we all feel this way, everyone?
Absolutely.
Sure.
No question.
Yep.
Deserving in so many ways, the intangibles notwithstanding, he was a terrific manager.
Yeah.
And if only we could have had him for another 10, 15 years in the helm. It's sad. Marty and I are the same age, and when we were kids, Gil Hodges was the ultimate adult. And to think that he's been gone for all these years and never lived beyond 47, and we've had the good fortune to at least keep his memory alive, it feels good, Mert.
Yeah, there was a story I read today about Gil, and there's a few things that I didn't remember. Of course, I was in the service for all the years that he was managing the Mets. So I wasn't in New York at the time, and I missed a lot of that stuff. But something was pointed out today that he was playing golf the day that he passed away. And they finished the 18 holes, and they decided to play another 9 holes. So that decision could have cost him his life. An extra 9 holes, 27 holes on that last day.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Did they complete those 27 holes?
They did.
Oh, wow.
He passed out on the way to his hotel, a motel.
Yeah, they were getting ready.
He never made it back to the room.
Yeah, they were going to decide about where they were going to eat dinner, because if I recall correctly, there was a brief players' strike, a work stoppage during that summer of '70, the winter of '72. There was like a brief little strike, so that's why there was like hanging time and all that,
yes,
like that.
That's true.
Yeah.
The moment also gave way to my most embarrassing moment as a Met fan.
Ooh.
During his funeral, or after his funeral, they called an impromptu press conference wanting to save the money of getting everybody together to announce that Yogi Berra had been appointed manager. Now, that after the funeral, they do this. That was Bush. Absolutely Bush. And it's not the first time I've been embarrassed by the Mets brass, starting with when Donald Grunt. That was horrible. But Doubleday made an anti-Semitic remark to his fans. I can't believe when I reread that, and the gall of the man to do that. It's been a long haul as a Met fan, but nevertheless, as Ted Kennedy used to say.
Who made the anti-Semitic comment?
Doubleday, when he was partners with Wilpon.
Wow, I never.
I like to ask. Go ahead. I like to ask everyone, what was it that made Gil Hodges such a folk hero to Brooklyn Dodgers fans? Because it's been said that they never ever booed him at Ebbets Field. What was it about Gil? I like each and every one of you. What is your theory about it? Why was he so beloved by Brooklyn Dodgers fans? What was it?
Well,
he was humble.
Okay. Everybody.
Chip in, guys.
Yeah.
I was a Snyder fan, number one. But the thing about Hodges was I think everybody respected him. And I think that's important. He would never go off half-cock. He would never do anything that would bring negativity toward the club. And even though I was, again, a Snyder fan, because that was the first game really I ever paid attention to, but Snyder hit a home run. But Hodges was just a class act. He was a class act as a player and then as a manager. And, there were so many Dodgers, Robinson and Campanella, Pee Wee Reese, and Snyder, making the Hall of Fame. He had to wait a long time. Duke had to wait 16 years, too. He was in 64, actually, with the Giants, and he didn't get in until 80, same year Kalen did. So he had to wait 16 years, but, again, Gil had to wait, 50 years. So it was horrendous.
Do you think that Gil Hodges was like the Brooklyn Dodgers equivalent of Lou Gehrig? Because Gehrig was like that strong, silent, absolutely redoubtable, a rock. Day in and day out, he was always there, always dependable. Do you get that same sense Gil was the Lou Gehrig of the Brooklyn Dodgers in that sense?
I think Pee Wee and Gil would have been the rock. I think those were the guys, in my opinion, as a very young guy, because I'm younger than you guys, of course, and definitely younger than Ralph.
Well, I know. You seem to point that out every time we interact, and I'm glad you do, because sometimes I forget, and I think you're younger than me, or I'm younger than you. And thank you for reminding me, Fred Wallin. By the way, Fred, I appreciate you reminding me of anything. It's my honor to be reminded.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, let's talk, if you guys don't mind, let's talk about some of the reasons that Gil had to wait all this time. I contend that if he went to the Mets and was healthy and could have put up another couple of years, and that would have been great, and would have shortened the time that he had to wait. Do you guys agree with me?
I don't know. I thought he had the numbers with the Dodgers. I just think he had to wait because so many Dodgers made it, and they had this thing about not having too many from one club. I remember when I was watching the Cincinnati Reds, you could make an argument that Dave Concepcion was a key ingredient in that team, and he was never even close as far as the Hall of Fame. Not the greatest hitter, but fine defensive shortstop, and he never even had, I think most people didn't even have a thought of him. So I just think, again, it just happened to be an unlucky situation, or they're a winning team because of the talent, but as far as the Hall of Fame, if you've got Roy Campanella, Snyder, Pee Wee Reese, and Newcomb on the mound. We've got a lot of guys who are very talented, and he was just on the outside looking in. I'm grateful that he finally made it. Obviously, too bad that he's not here to enjoy it.
Yeah. I like it. Oh,
but on the other hand, it's delightful that his family, his wife Joan,
yes.
who dyed her hair orange in honor of the Mets, I remember. Very faithful woman. She's in her 90s. She got to live to see that, and both Gil Hodges Jr. and Irene Hodges, who have been friends of the show, especially Irene. I wish you were here tonight. We invited her, and there's some sort of a memorial service for
yes.
Gil that didn't include us, and I was shocked by that. But so that took precedence. But Irene got to see her dad, and what's really nice is that Tom Seaver will have a statue right next to Gil's.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So sometimes the Mets do something right, and this is a good combination of both icons being honored, and I love that as a Met fan.
I'd like to put another. Okay, go ahead, Marty. Yeah. I was going to ask Marty grew up as a Dodger fan. Yeah.
And so I'd like to get his 2 cents on this, if he will.
Go, Marty.
Ralph, we were so young. 1957 was their last year. I was 10 years old. I actually got to go to a twilight doubleheader against the Cubs in, I think it was August of that year.
Wow.
We were spending the summer at Rockaway, and my uncle, who lived in Brooklyn still, he came out, took me in the car, and we went to a twilight doubleheader at Ebbets Field, and then I slept over at his house in Brooklyn, and he brought me back the next day. But I definitely still remember being in Ebbets Field and watching the game from there. I'm sure it was my first night game, so it was really, really spectacular. And all the stuff that Gil did. I mean, he was an all-star for 8 years. He won several Golden Gloves.
Yeah.
Who when you think of him, the only other guy that comes to mind defensively is Keith Hernandez. You could use them both in the same sentence, really. And one game in particular, Ralph and I were at this game. It was a doubleheader, May 12th, 1962. Doubleheader against the Braves. A Sunday afternoon, and the Mets won both games on walk-off home runs.
Wow.
The first one was by Hobie Landreth, and the second one was by Gil Hodges.
and the first one Hobie Landreth hit was off Warren Spahn.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And I had to leave the game, if Marty will remember. I had my brother with me, and there was someone else, but my brother and I left after the first game, and there was someone else there. We wouldn't have left you
Herman
alone.
My friend Herman was there.
Herman Fink, am I right?
That's
wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A Ted Kluszewski fan.
No longer with us, by the way.
No longer with us. He was a Ted Kluszewski fan, and I remember. I remember those days. 11 years old. Can you imagine that? The many moons.
Sadly, the games weren't 7-inning doubleheaders.
Okay.
I want to ask something. You think one reason why he didn't, there was a delay in his induction was simply because one was his the fact that he died young, and secondly, he was such a humble, person that, in this day and age, you got to toot your own horn, or you have to have a lot of people banging the drums for you to earn induction. You think his own modesty told against him? That's another reason for the delay in getting induction. What do you think, fellas?
I don't think so. I apologize for a little Darcy barking in the background. I don't think that was it. Honestly, I think it was because so many Dodgers had gotten in, from Robinson to Reese to Campanella to Snyder. They just didn't want to put too many. And obviously, as the years went on, fewer and fewer writers actually saw him play. Smaller and smaller as the years go by, because, again, you can a lot of people, like Vada Pinson, and he was after Hodges, but Vada Pinson should be in the Hall of Fame. But how many of the writers who vote now ever saw Vada play? Vada did everything for the Reds, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. On Facebook, I have his son and his grandson on it, and they keep pushing for the Hall of Fame. But it's tough because, again, as the time goes on, fewer and fewer people were even there to see him play for the Reds, and obviously the same deal with Hodges.
Yeah.
And for some reason, there are a number of retired writers who don't get to keep their voting privileges.
Yeah.
I will give you a good example in a moment. Harold Bach doesn't get to vote anymore, and I can assure you, from hours and hours of podcasts with Hal Bach, that he has got every bit of his bag of marbles. He can. He has a memory that won't quit, and that is my big bone of contention with the Hall of Fame, is that they cut off guys who are no longer employed, but still in touch with the game, still get up every morning and write independently of who they work for.
And they know what's going on.
They know what's going on. So I think one of the things that I've strove to do is to give folks like Alan Blumkin, Marty Rose, folks getting up there, Harold Bach, George Case III, give them, all up in their 70s and 80s, Jerry Feigelberg, all as intelligent and as quick and as articulate as they ever were. And I want to disprove the theory of when you reach a certain age, you lose it. And not in this profession. And we hope to continue that as long as we could remember what we're continuing.
Another thing about the getting into the Hall of Fame, guys, do you remember there was a time when he would have gotten in, but Roy Campanella could not attend the meeting to vote, and Ted Williams would not accept his vote over the phone?
Ouch.
He was there.
Ouch.
I don't remember what year it was. It was a long time ago.
Ouch.
But he would have gotten in that year. It's at least, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right. And to think they wouldn't waive it when Roy Campanella couldn't get to the meeting, but he was a frickin' paraplegic, quadriplegic, and for one reason or another, he had to be hospitalized that week for a procedure or something, and they didn't count this vote.
Yeah, one vote short, right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Hey, when Gil came back as a player with the Mets, was he one of the reasons why there was a lot of fans coming to Mets games at the Polo Grounds? I mean, was he like a star attraction that a lot of fans came back? You know, the early Mets fans. I mean, was Gil part of that reason during that first season of 62?
He and a number of Dodgers. There was Charlie Neal, Don Zimmer,
Clem Levine,
Joe Ginsberg.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Yeah, and they tried to draw from the Met image, the Dodger image, but Gil was so hurt by then. His knee was so gone. How was he as a?
He played 54 games that year.
Fred Wallin, how was he as an L.A. Dodger?
I'm sorry, what?
How was Gil as an L.A. Dodger production-wise?
Not great. I mean, he was almost done. I don't think people understood that. He still was a fine defensive first baseman, but, and also, unless he pulled the ball a lot, and, Gil sometimes did, and then you had the short screen and left, but left center and right center were pretty deep, so it was tough in the Coliseum to hit the ball out of the park, unless you were a straight pull hitter, and he was not. But he was a fine defensive first baseman, and but again, he was not the same player he was. Right. Snyder wasn't the same either. None of them were the same as they were, of course, in the Brooklyn uniform. And I was at Roy Campanella a night in '59 with my dad. Something I will never forget. 93,103.
Wow!
It was something. That, again, you can't forget like that. But obviously, the Brooklyn Dodgers. See, you guys were lucky. You guys were in New York. You were in Brooklyn. I was in L.A. So all I had was my dad turning the TV on and saying, "That's the best player in baseball," and Snyder. And I swore the next pitch hits a home run. So I got pictures around this house. My wife thinks I'm crazy, but that's the way it goes. But the point being, Hodges was a mainstay. I think he had the numbers anyways. If there had been fewer Dodgers in the Hall of Fame and fewer Dodgers with the great records also, and of course Robinson, maybe not the great records, but what he stood for, things like that, he would have made it. I really believe that. And the story that we all heard about Roy not being able to vote because he had to get to the hospital is for Ted Williams to say that was, I don't know. I thought about that for years. How could he do something like that? Would he have done it if it would have been for him, to vote for him, or something like that? I don't know. But, it could turn you off for Ted Williams forever, too. I mean, maybe the greatest hitter in the history game. But still, Hodges should have made it on his numbers in the Brooklyn uniform. Obviously, everybody is sorry that it took this long, but as Ralph indicated, it was great that Joan's still alive to know it and know that her husband's in there, and that's fantastic. And sort of like the statue at the Staples Center, now Crypto in Los Angeles, they waited until 2 years ago to put the statue for Elgin Baylor up, and he may have been the reason that pro basketball was a hit here in Southern California, but they actually waited till 2 years ago, and he dies last year, so he only had 2 years to realize that he had that statue there. Sometimes people just make mistakes, and they made a mistake on Hodges, but at least it's been corrected now.
I know. Fred, I want to ask you a quick question. Were you in the stands that day? Because Gil Hodges hit the game-winning home run in Game 4 of the '59 series. Were you in the stands that day by any chance, Fred?
No, I was in grammar school.
Yeah. But, Gil had he had at least 2 game-winning RBIs in World Series play. I mean, in this Game 7 of '55 series, he knocked in both of those Brooklyn Dodgers runs. And then, of course, like I just said, he had the game-winning RBI in Game 4 of the '59 series because this guy was a clutch hitter. That's another thing, in his favor. I mean, he, in World Series competition, with the exception of '52, he came through. I mean, he was able to get his hits and all of that. I mean, say in his defense. One question. Can anybody explain what caused this famous slump in 1952 where it began with the last couple of games of the regular season, lasted all through the series, and it started like the first week of the '53 season? Was anyone ever explained what happened? What caused this slump? Anybody offhand?
Well, you guys know that it was the only team in the history of Catholicism where they prayed for Gil Hodges in Brooklyn churches. They actually stopped the service. That's how beloved Gil Hodges was.
Yeah.
And that's how much baseball meant to Brooklyn. And if I want to say, I'm sorry, Fred, I know you got to have the Dodgers, and Brooklyn got to lose them. But that was disgraceful. And if you would have had the Seals and the LA Stars in 2 years, that would have been just PC for both teams. Because as good as the Mets are to have and to cherish, it was never the same. The Brooklyn Dodger giant rivalry was, and even Fred will agree, that rivalry has paled now that they moved. I just want to say, Robert Moses, spin and burning.
Yes, indeedy duty. Yeah. I'd like to ask. Go ahead, Ralph.
Go ahead.
I like to ask everybody, what was it that made Gil Hodges the great manager he was with the Mets? I mean, what do you think? What was the secret to his greatness as a manager? Everybody.
I think he was strong, and I think the players on that team had to follow his instructions. I think they weren't going to. Again, the game was different then when the players didn't control everything, but he would have been a strong manager even in 2022 as he was in '69. I really believe that. That was his makeup. He didn't back down. And
remember, the culture was changing in '69.
Yeah.
And he kept that together, the Cleon Jones thing. And I don't recall the entire story of that. Marty read up on it a while back, if you will, Marty Rose.
The Cleon Jones thing?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I don't remember the whole situation, but it was something about a woman that wasn't his wife, that he was carrying on with. So, I mean... Yeah,
I think they were found naked in the car.
Something like that, yeah.
That was like in the 70s, if I recall correctly, but I remember when '69, I remember reading about it. Was it a game against the Astros? There was a base hit in the left field, and people kind of thought Cleon kind of was leisurely about it, and Gil took a long walk out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, I know the story with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He walked out there, and everybody, he came out of the game. He took Cleon out of the game, and everybody thought that it was because he didn't hustle after the ball. But it turned out that he had an injury. He had a leg injury, and that's why he couldn't run any faster after the ball, and that's why he came out of the game, because he obviously told Gil that it's hurting, and I couldn't have run any quicker. So that's what happened with that situation.
Yeah. Ralph, you alluded earlier in the show that you wish Gil could have managed a few more years later. I'd like to ask everyone this hypothetical question. Let's say Gil Hodges had been the Mets manager in the '73 series instead of Yogi. Do you think if he had been the manager instead of Yogi, you think the Mets could have pulled out that '73 series? What do you think?
That's a tough one. I think the pitching decision in the sixth game made all the difference.
Yeah.
If they're the safe receiver for Game 7, if I happen to have been in the stands at that sixth game, the only World Series game I've ever attended.
Wow.
And I left that game. I was an insurance manager, and I was trying to recruit an agent. And we went to the game together. And I'm an adult. I'm 23, 25, something like that. And I couldn't speak after the game. I couldn't be, he said something like, well, there'll always be another game. Tough loss, you know. Needless to say, he wasn't recruited by me any further. And he was Lucius Allen's cousin. God, I remember that. And he couldn't understand that competitive stuff. Oh, I was crushed. That was one of those, because I knew they'd lose the 7th game. So couldn't have been any worse. Couldn't have been any worse than Yogi.
1 second.
And not that I'm blaming him.
Ralph, 1 second. Lucius Allen from UCLA's cousin, or Lucius Allen?
Yes. His name was Bob something. They were both from Indiana.
Yeah.
Lucius was, and he was, and his wife was Charlene.
Wow.
Because I had him over to the house once, and he said to his wife, he says, Charlene, that's the wine talking. And it was, but that's all right. But I'm trying to think of his last name, but
I don't know.
Yes, we digress a little bit. In keeping with the spirit.
Yeah. One thing that impressed me about Hodges in that 69 season was that he was using a 5-man rotation in 69, which you really didn't see that much of in those days. Usually teams were going with 4-man rotations, but with the Mets, he was using 5-man, and actually that kind of helped him out in that stretch run because the Cubs, their pitching staff was very thin and was very overtaxed, and yet the Mets had so many great arms. You had Seaver, Koosman, you had Nolan Ryan, you had Tug McGraw, plus Taylor, even Jim McAndrew and Cardwell were doing great pitching there. So I mean, the Mets had that
Gentry and Ryan. Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was kind of like a new groundbreaking thing because I don't think that many teams were using 5-men rotations. I mean, you older guys would know because I was just a little kid. I was only 6.
You're right about that. You definitely.
Fred wouldn't know anything about that.
I mean, Fred, you didn't see him at 5-man rotations.
I'm older.
Those days. Yeah. I mean, another thing was I love his platooning, though. I mean, reading about it, he had 2 good set. You only had 3 guys who were playing every day. That was Agee, Bud Harrelson, and Cleon in left field. But everyone else, he was platooning, and he got maximum use, out of those platooning players there. I mean, he was actually getting better years with them simply because they weren't getting jammed up and all that. I mean, that was another impressive thing.
Right.
Them getting Clendenin was paramount.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. They had the glider at third base, Wayne Garrett. These guys were just good enough to win. And Grody was a terrific catcher.
Yeah.
Great arm.
Very underrated. Yep.
Very underrated. You're absolutely right, Marty. And that had a lot to do with it. Role players, Shamsky, Swoboda.
Yeah.
And remember, too, that when they first got Agee, he had a terrible year. And they could have given up on him and didn't. So it all came together, but there were only 3 people or 2 people that really believed in the Mets going as far as they did and in spring training, and that was Grody and the aforementioned Gil Hodges. And he refused to let negativity get involved.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong. I think you guys can do it. But that kind of thing.
Yeah. Wasn't Gil instrumental in getting Al Weiss? I mean, didn't I read something that it was his recommendation that the Mets go out and get Al Weiss from the American League and bring him to the Mets? I mean, can anybody?
Well, I think he came over with Agee.
Okay. But I wonder if that was on Gil's recommendation, because I remember reading that Gil made the remark he can be useful in many ways, which he was, because Weiss could play second, short, third. I mean, and hey, he hit those 3 home runs in '69. All 3 of them were clutch, man.
He really did.
Yes. It was an improbable year, but when you think it's doubly improbable when you think where they came from.
Yeah.
I think even in '68 they were 9th or
ninth
out of 10.
Yeah, they were in 9th place. Yeah, but the thing was that even though they finished 9th place, they set a team record, 73 wins. I mean, before the record was only 66 wins in '66. That was the only other time the Mets never finished in last place. So it was still, quote unquote, an improvement when you think about it.
You know, guys, I was at Koufax's first no-hitter at Dodger Stadium against the Mets, '62, for the expansion Mets. And in the first inning, now it's called an immaculate inning, 9 strikes, and everybody struck out. And it's a true story now. I may have used it with Ralph before, but I had to leave after the 6th inning because my dad managed a butcher shop, and he had to get home early. And remember, the game started at 8 o'clock in Los Angeles at that point. So we listened to Vin Scully the last 3 innings of Sandy's first no-hitter. It happened to be against the Mets. And they were horrible. There's no question. And your point well taken, that even within the 7-year period, how they went up that one, in '69, it was a miracle Mets. I mean, there's no question. But he did have the pitching, and if pitching is really 70 or 80% of the game, that he did have, and that's what won it for him.
Yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
let me just take a moment to call attention to the gentleman who made Koufax into a pitcher, not a thrower. He was Norm Sherry, and he was my friend. He was my friend doing tops. I'd seen him year after year, and we were 2 Jews in Oregon, so that'll tell you something right there.
Yeah.
We were the ones, they put us in the newspaper, as a matter of fact, one time, but he was just a great guy, and he taught Sandy to take a few miles off the fastball and get it over, and I wanted to credit him for giving you the thrill, Fred Wallin, of watching a Sandy Koufax no-hitter. That would never have happened without Norm Sherry.
Hey, no question. But I've got a baseball card, and you would know what year it was. It's Larry Sherry and Norm Sherry, 60 or 61, whatever, or 62. I'm not sure, but I do have it in my ridiculously small baseball card collection.
Hey, Larry Sherry was a hero in '59. Won 2 games in the '59 series and saved 2. I mean, he was a hero.
There was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Against the Chicago White Sox, which is fodder for another podcast. That was a tremendous race between Cleveland, the Yankees, and the White Sox in '59.
Yeah.
Just 2 years after moving, the Dodgers were in the World Series, and it took, or won the World Series, and it must have taken 40 years for the Giants to win a World Series. But once they started winning World Series, wow, what a dynasty there. And that's something we could talk about, Fred, the Giants dynasty on Sports Byline overnight with Fred Wallin.
I like to end this show with this. I like each one of you, your most fondest memory of Gil Hodges. Just each one of you in turn. Just what is it you might love to remember him by? Each one of you.
Okay. I'll start. There's a picture that I posted today of Gil Hodges with a very elderly Casey Stengel, embracing right before Casey died, in whenever that was, but right after the World Series in '69, and I'll always remember the look on his face of joy, of sharing it with Casey, and that's what I remember about Gil Hodges.
Okay, Marty, you're next.
Yeah, well, I just remember how he was a really beloved person in Brooklyn. And like I said, I missed most of his years as a manager. But that one game where he hit the walk-off home run in 1962, we're coming up on, the 60th anniversary of that.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that was
wow.
How about that, Ralph?
That's right, man.
Yeah, how about that? And how about that, Fred Wallin? You can see what the old guys have to go through.
Okay.
I remember Gil just with the Vin Scully interviews here in Southern California when they first came here in '58. And again, on the air, he was always a class act. And of course, '76 Union Gasoline. I've got his. Everybody had. Most of the players in the team had a 7 or 8 page history of the guy and whatever the case might be, and it's still in pretty good condition. So I've read it many, many times over the last 60-plus years. So, Gil, hope he's listening to us right now. We're very happy that you made it. Should have made it earlier, but your wife, Joan, knows you're in, and your family knows you're in, and hope you're having a good time up there.
Me, I'd like to sum up this way. I was too young to see Gil Hodges play. I was born in 1963, and when he passed away, I wasn't even 9 years old yet. But I would like to extend, I think all of us extend all our love to his wife, Joan, to the Hodges children, Irene, Gil Jr., Cynthia, and Barbara. We send all our collective love, our prayers for your late father's memory, and all the love in the world as a great baseball player and as a great manager. Rest in peace, Gil Hodges. May God rest your soul forever. Amen.
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 All right.
Take care.
When you say amen, that's a good way to end the podcast.
Take care, and God love you all, okay?
Bye, guys.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Thank you, Matthew DiBiase, for
I love you all,
this
man.
gem of the show.
Thank you. Love you.
Bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.